When I agree with what God says, I am now affirming that God is not a liar.
Make sure that what you are saying about yourself is in alignment with what God has said about you.
And I think it's so much easier sometimes to be successful in the organizations we lead, in the church, in community, in business, because we're surrounded by the applause, right? Like, hey, you hit that KPI, good job. Many of you are hiding behind a addiction, a struggle, a difficulty that the devil placed long before you became a leader. And he already knew you were going to become a leader.
You just got to pay attention to, obviously, don't look over and ignore red flags.
The first step is to define what matters most.
What matters most should always matter most.
Glory. How do leaders create the right mindset for sustainable leadership?
When you write a goal down, it already increases the chance of that goal becoming reality by 50%.
Wow.
Just because you write the goal down. So you're either going to disrupt the pattern or you're going to repeat the pattern. Do you really build your life on what God has said about you?
This is The Deep Dive with Jose St. Phard.
Welcome to The Deep Dive with Jose St. Phard. This is the podcast for leaders, dreamers, and change makers who want to make a lasting impact in the church, in business, and in culture. Today, I'm with my friend Benjamin Lundquist. He has an incredible podcast. He's an incredible leader. He's a pastor. He's a coach. He's a friend. And he's here today, and we're talking about something that matters really a lot to families, to leaders, to anyone who's leading a team, organization, or family. It's how to lead sustainably without burning out, how to lead sustainably on the long term. And today we're here with Benjamin. And Benjamin, I have such an honor to have you here.
The honor is mine, and I've been looking forward to the launch of your podcast.
Yes,
for a while.
It's finally here.
And hey, I already know it's going to bless a lot of people.
Yeah,
so thanks for your friendship.
Yeah.
And it really is an honor to have this conversation with you.
Yes.
And I know you're a leader that really cares about sustainability. You care about not just leading well in a season, but leading well for life.
Yes.
And so honored to talk about that with you.
Yeah. I'm so glad. I think this is something that's so important for leaders in general, for pastoral leaders, for leaders in healthcare, leaders in education. It's such an important topic because often we lead intensely for a season, but we don't lead sustainably for a lifetime. And I want us to be able to talk today to help people who are leading intensely learn how to slow down well enough in order to last a lifetime and leave a legacy that matters. One of my first questions I ask leaders on the podcast is, if you could have lunch, dinner, even breakfast with just one leader, who would it be? Just to kind of like, who would you like, this is the person I would reach out to and I want to have lunch with. Who would that be?
So two that I followed for a while, Carey Nieuwhof also has a massive podcast.
Yes.
And kind of understands dynamics of the faith space, a marketplace space. Interviewed a ton of people. I think he's close to 700 episodes in. So Carey Nieuwhof, I think, is a great mind around leadership and faith conversation.
Yes.
Craig Rochelle, he stewards the largest non-denominational network of churches. And I think he would be a great one to connect with as well. So there's a couple. Hey, I think you're a good leader. I think you're a great leader. So
thank you for that. I think one of the things leaders find hard to really grasp is how do I lead at home as well as at work, and as well as in all the other spheres that we have. Now, you just mentioned a couple of leaders. What do you say to leaders to help them understand how to engage in sustainable leadership? Like, how do you help them understand the importance of it? And you might even want to start with, what is sustainable leadership? What does that mean?
Yeah, I think there's obviously we're going to unpack a ton of this conversation because there is a lot in here. I think when you think about sustainable leadership, I think a lot of that is rooted in number one, do you really know who you are? So do you have an identity that is solid, that is anchored? And the reality is, if you don't know your identity, the world's going to tell you who you are.
Wow.
And depending on any given day,
Yeah.
that could either make you stronger or that could crush you. And so I think foundationally, you have to know who you are as a leader.
Yeah.
And for me as a person of faith, that's going back every day, that my identity, worth, and value comes exclusively from what God says about me and who God says that I am.
Wow.
And I think if you don't have that as the foundation, you are going to be blowing in the wind from one day to the next.
Yeah.
And you're probably not going to last in leadership because you're going to have some days where people are telling you good things. And you're going to have days where people are telling you what you may need to hear, but what you don't want to hear. And so I think for a leader who wants to go long term, you got to remember that your identity needs to be anchored and re-anchored over the next 30 to 40 years of your life. So yeah, we could talk about that. And I think obviously the stewardship of your character. I have known a lot of leaders who got taken down by addictions, who got taken down by little seeds that were planted over a long period of time that undermined what God was wanting to do in their life. And so I think that stewardship of your character, which means like there's the public side of leadership, the public facing side of leadership that everybody sees, but it's the private side of leadership that where you are caring for your life, leading your life that nobody sees, that's going to sustain you in a way that everybody sees. And so it's the idea of like what happens in the dark and how you lead yourself in the dark is going to affect how you impact people publicly long term. So identity, that foundation, caring for your character. And I think also just in your own life, being able to get clarity on what really matters most. And I think a good question for sustainable leadership is, what would break your heart if you lost this? Because if you don't care for yourself, that's where things are going. So who or what, if you lost that, would wreck your life and ruin your life? And I think it goes back to, what do you really value that matters enough to you that you're willing to put in the work to steward this thing well long term?
So what you just said is just, incredibly powerful when it comes to leadership. Often we talk about leading people, and we go to school to learn how to lead people. We go to school to learn how to lead organizations, but very few places teach us how to lead ourselves. And one of the things, one of the wisest men who ever lived, Solomon said, if you want to build a city, it starts with building yourself. Whoever takes care of themselves is able to build a city. I'm trying to remember the exact wording, but I remember reading that and I thought, man, if I want to lead others better, I have to learn to lead myself well. If I don't lead myself well, I will not lead others better. And I think that's such a powerful thing that you mentioned, this idea of, leaders who've fallen because of addiction or something that was planted over time. And I remember one of the things that, for me, especially when it comes to faith leadership, that a lot of us, I'm just going to be very honest, and I don't know who this is for, many of you are hiding behind a addiction, a struggle, a difficulty that the devil placed long before you became a leader. And he already knew you were going to become a leader. And it was a bomb waiting to detonate. And I hope this conversation is the thing you need to say, I've got to fix this. Because one of the things you mentioned here is you made this statement, who will be impacted, affected, who will, if this person's missing or if this organization is no longer part of my life, if this thing, like, what will it wreck me? And if it will, is it worth saving now?
Yep.
Is it worth doing the hard work now while God has graciously covered it?
Yep.
Do you put the hard work in now in order to not lose that thing, that person, that system later? And so I guess one of the things that I can ask, I want to go back to this idea of seeds that are planted over time. What are some warning signs that a leader can pay attention to realize that A, there's something in my life that will wreck me,
Yep.
or B, I'm approaching burnout
Yep.
because of the lack of self leadership. I don't know if you
Yeah, so I think when you're thinking about like what are the red flags or warning signs, I think there's a couple tools that you can kind of lean into that can help you understand that.
Yeah.
One would be if you got an inner circle of people, ask them.
Yeah.
Like even more than how healthy do I think I am?
Yes.
How healthy do the people that know me the most
Yes.
think I am? And you may have somebody say, man, I've just noticed like your countenance has changed in the last year.
Wow.
The way you speak to your wife and your kids is
Wow.
a little bit different. You're a bit edgier. I've noticed that your reserves of energy in your tank seems to be lower, trending over a long period of time.
Wow.
So I think a lot of it is, you can self-reflect.
Yeah.
I think that's powerful.
Yeah.
I think you can inner circle reflect, like simply ask your people.
Yeah.
I also think that you can take a deep dive into even plotting out the last 2 or 3 years of your life and saying like, what are the high points and low points of the last few years?
Yeah.
And you may step back, and sometimes you can even do this with sticky notes on a wall.
Yeah.
But you may have all these sticky notes of like all the high points and low points of the last 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
And you sit back and you step back and you sit in a chair and you realize there's a pattern. Like every low point was preceded by a choice that I made. And you step back and you look and it's like, wow, there's a pattern here.
Yeah.
And there's a trend here.
Yeah.
And as you look at what comes next, I think the question is that's up to you. So you're either going to disrupt the pattern or you're going to repeat the pattern. So you can see as you look at a piece of paper, if you plot out highs and lows over time, you can see like I've been trending with a significant amount of lows more than I was a year ago.
Wow.
So something's going on.
Yeah.
Like either self-leadership is lacking or I got distractions happening in my life. So I think I would do it all. I would self-assess. I would look for trends and things that are going on as you kind of plot out, know, highs and lows over the last couple of years. I would ask my people, for that. But I think a lot of leaders, if they're willing to be vulnerable, and I think that's the key is vulnerability.
Wow.
If you're willing to be vulnerable and look at the man or woman in the mirror, you know when you got red flags in your life. It's just whether or not you're willing to own those and lean into those. I know I have friends who are friends with some of the most prominent leaders in the Christian world who have fallen significantly in the last 3 to 4 years. And a lot of them, if you look at what was going on around them, they did not have people in their inner circle who were holding their feet to the fire. They had yes men and women who were telling them what they wanted to hear. And so were the red flags there? 100%. But did they have the right people around them? They often didn't. Because it's easier to deal with people that don't ask you hard questions. So I think there's a lot in there. But I think you just got to pay attention to, obviously, don't look over and ignore red flags that exist. But you got to ask the hard questions like, why is that there? And what do I need to do with this so I don't see the pattern that shouldn't continue continuing into the future? And I'll just tell you, for me, I don't want to lose my marriage. For anybody that has, God has redemptive chapters.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
but you hear what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose my relationship with Kim.
Yeah.
I don't want to not be a great dad long term.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a commitment to, we got to figure this thing out.
Yeah.
Because you kind of get one shot at a long life, if you will, and we want to do this thing well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where people are burdened when it comes to leadership. One of the things that I've gathered from leaders who are really successful, I used to ask this question, honestly, when I was younger. I'm such an intense person, and I go all in when I'm doing something. And I used to go, where are the leaders who've changed the world, who have families?
Yeah.
You don't really hear about their families. You don't really have, even in scripture, like Moses, his wife comes on the scene once in a while, these change makers, Joseph gets married. It's almost like their families are like a side note.
Yep.
And I used to go, man, it's either you're changing the world or you're changing your family. Like, you can't do both, right? So that was my whole thing. Like, you can't do both. And I realized that at the same time, God gets upset at Eli.
Yep.
For not leading his family well. And Eli was a success when it comes to the church. And I think it's so much easier sometimes to be successful in the organizations we lead, in the church, in community, in business, because we're surrounded by the applause, right? Like, hey, you hit that KPI, good job. You got this amount of people, in the church, good job. You've sold this many books, good job. In home, your kids aren't waiting for you to go, Daddy, good job. Your wife is just sitting there going, oh, you shot a great video, or you did this today, good job. Like, that's not happening. And so often we go to the places we are celebrated. So how do you create sustainable leadership at home while trying to change the world? Like, how do you, what motivates you at home, and that allows you to go, this is a priority. So how do you, and I guess I'll ask another, how do you build systems in place to ensure you are lasting long term at home as well as at work?
Yeah, I think that's a great assignment, great question. And I heard this vision of kind of leading your family, and it was phrased in this way by somebody else, is that success, like with your kids, for example. Yeah. Success is that when your kids are adults and they don't have to be with you, they still want to be with you in adulthood. So I think part of the vision for leading your marriage and leading your family is your vision's got to be long term. And I think part of it is you got to be so rooted in your identity that you are not driven by the applause of your family or the applause of the marketplace and the world or ministry, but you are driven by, I know who I am, and I'm stepping into the responsibility that God has given me, because this is what really, really matters. Yeah. I would rather have applause from my kids when they're adults than applause from my kids when they are kids. And the thing is, like, leading your kids is hard, man. I mean, the reality is, like, your kids are never going to turn out the way you think they should. Yeah. And your relationship with your kids is always going to be different than you think it would be. That's just the ebb and flow of this stuff. Yeah. And so I think for me, the reason I can be effective at leading out there is that my highest priority is leading in here. Ooh. And I think that's part of where people get tripped up when it comes to leadership. And it's like, oh no, I got to lead all this stuff. Yeah. And sometimes I lead more, out in the community than in my family. It's like, hang on. Your top priority is to, number one, lead yourself. That is number one priority. Wow. There's no compromise on that. Yeah. You lead you, and then you lead your home, number two. Yeah. And then out of a healthy you and a healthy home, then you impact and influence the world. Yeah. So for me, I would say it's not this big mashup of leadership,
Yeah.
there are compartments
Yeah.
that you prioritize.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I got to be healthy, so I'm going to lead me. And I'm going to steward well my home and my family so I can impact outside from the health of what is inside. And I don't know, somebody had given me this advice. They said, like, even the idea of life balance, it's such a fantasy.
Yeah.
because it should not be your priority to give equal time disbursement and energy to everything.
Yeah.
No, here's the deal. What matters most should always matter most.
Wow.
That's it.
Wow.
It's not about like, I'm going to give an hour here. No. What matters most should always matter most.
Glory.
And for me, my identity, worth, and value from God matters.
Yeah.
My relationship with Kim matters.
Yeah.
But the relationship with my kids matters.
Yeah.
And again, it's all somebody that's listening is always going to say, "Oh, that's easier said than done."
It is.
I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what matters most needs to always matter most.
Yeah.
And so I think that idea of you live and lead from the worth and value that you already have in God.
Yeah.
You impact the world from a home that is in order.
Yes.
And a home that has a solid foundation.
Yeah.
You and your wife are as good as you can be.
Yeah.
Your fatherhood is engaged. And you impact from where
space.
you are and from that space.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that's been a real helpful thing for me, in that as best a job as I can, I'm just not going to compromise what matters most.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
If I got to leave this to go to the gym to exercise, I'm going to do that, because if I'm not healthy, I got no energy for what matters.
Yeah.
And it is, and man, it's like, this is real talk. It's not easy.
No.
It is not easy.
No.
But I think when you do what's not easy over time, it becomes easier.
Yeah.
Because it's just part of your approach to life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so much to unpack in what you just said. It is easier said than done, because I think when people hear, what matters most is what matters most, they're like, but most of us are reactive.
Yep.
We're not proactive. And I think maybe the first step is to define what matters most.
Yep.
Like, what matters most. And a lot of us, when it comes to the myth of work-life balance, our value is rooted. I know for me, for a long time, my value was rooted in being the best.
Yep.
I wanted to be the best at home. I wanted to be the best at church. I wanted to be the best. And so determining what matters most, wasn't even, it's like, how do I be the best? And so one of the things that, you do a lot when you're coaching people and you're pastoring people and you're leading people, is you're helping them figure out what are their self-limiting, beliefs that are even keeping them from getting to the place of determining what matters most, right? And I think two things that are part of this is, I think boundaries play a role in this, and overcoming self-limiting beliefs play a role in finding out what matters most, what do I not want to lose, and what does it truly mean to have rhythms in my life that help me succeed, rather than trying to balancing the intensity I put, in one place or the other. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think for me, one of the things that I'd love to hear from you is, how do you help people identify those self-limiting beliefs, and how do you help people determine what boundaries they need to put in place in order to get to the place where they're succeeding long term?
Yeah, great question. And I think for me, the filter for the beliefs is going back to, do you, as a person of faith, a leader of faith, do you really build your life on what God has said about you? So I think then when you have that as your foundation, you filter all the garbage that comes in through that filter. And you simply can say, all the ideas that come in, and I think an idea, those pop into our heads every day. Something becomes a thought when you allow it to take root, and you fuel and feed that idea and allow it to take root. So you always got stuff coming in your head. Matter of fact, I think research supports that we have 60,000 thoughts that come into our head every single day.
Wow.
95% of those are repeated from the day before, and 80% of those are negative.
Wow.
So you got to filter
Wow.
out the garbage that is in your head.
Yeah.
And what really matters is we have to filter out the garbage of what we often believe or perceive about ourselves.
Yeah.
So for me, it's going back to a couple questions. Is that thought actually true? Secondly, did God or would God say that about me?
Wow.
And is that thought helping me move forward to becoming who I believe God has called and created me to be?
Yeah.
So you got to be able to filter out, all the thoughts that are coming into your head, and you simply are grabbing onto the ones that are helpful.
Yeah.
And you're trying to let go of the ones that are not helpful.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you need those people around you to say like, hey, Pastor, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
but in love,
Yeah.
let me tell you that that's not true about you.
Yeah.
You can impact that demographic
Yeah.
who we're not even reaching right now.
Yeah.
You can have an incredibly healthy family and an incredibly healthy church and ministry together.
Yeah.
You can be an engaged leader and an engaged father as well. So I think it's, getting those right people around you so you can have people asking you the tough questions. And I think that's one thing as a community, as a lot of different types of community, that we got to be very intentional about. Do not give sympathy to the lies that other people believe about themselves.
Wow.
So don't hear somebody say something that is rooted in limiting belief and simply say, man, that's tough. I'm sorry about that. No, it's where you know who you are enough to want the best for that other person.
Yeah.
So the best for that other person is to say, hey, in love, let me just call an audible. Hang with me for a minute. I don't see yourself in that. I don't see you in that way. And God doesn't see you in that way either. So I know you may feel that way. But feelings are not Lord over your life. Feelings are evidence of what may be happening in your life. But I just want to speak some truth into you. You do have the potential to accomplish that. So I think, that says that was a lot of stuff. But I think you got to figure out your questions and your filter. So when those limiting beliefs begin to come up, you could call them out and name them. And look for, is there alignment with biblical principles? And has God said this about me? And if you come up against something and you simply can say, God would never have said that about me. A loving father would never have said that about their kid. Don't give fuel and energy and focus to that thing. But you got to replace it with what is true about you. And choose to fuel that. So I think, that's been helpful for me. But I think you're always going to be challenged by limiting beliefs. So you got to call those out, filter them for yourself, and get around. We're good friends. Like, you got to get around the right people. Who know themselves well enough where they really want what is best for you versus saying, oh, you're right. You can't do that. But somebody that says like, listen, that's just not true. I mean, it's not, and so we're gonna call that out.
And the thing is, I've experienced this as a leader. You've done that with me. I'm talking and you're like, no, I don't think so. And even in my church community, I have people that are, no, that's not true about you. I don't see that. And it's such an affirming thing to hear that. I think most of us also miss that we do live in a spiritual world. And as faith leaders, this is an important aspect for us to kind of understand too. We know that vision is what gives people the fuel to keep going in times of uncertainty. A clear vision. And often when we are talking, we are laying out a vision for our own lives. And when we're talking about ourselves, we're laying out a vision for our own lives. And when we're saying stuff, our words are creative. They have power. And I remember reading one time that when we're, making these statements, there's a thought that comes into our mind that's coming from the spiritual world. When we say it back, we're agreeing and we're making an agreement with the spiritual world that, yes, we agree with that. And that's powerful, right? Like we're making an agreement. And then the crazy part is that in order to break that agreement, because that agreement will now then limit you from what you can do, you've got to now grab hold from the I am God who has your true identity and break that agreement and go back to, hey, this is what God has said about me. So in other words, it's not just, mindfulness and mental, it's not mental exercise. I mean, there's a spirituality to this. There's a reality to this that when I agree with what God says, I am now affirming that God is not a liar. That God is not a liar. And then I am now agreeing with the I am God that makes all things real, that could now be a reality in my life. There's a study that it was so crazy. There's this study of people that believed that, they can't do more than one thing at a certain time, or there's limit to what they can accomplish. People that have been told they have this diagnosis, whether it's ADHD or that, like they carry on saying, I can't do this, I can't do that. And in this study, they found that they put a bunch of people that have the same exact diagnosis, and the people who believed that they couldn't do more than one thing, they were the only people who didn't do more than one thing. They were the only people that couldn't achieve it and they couldn't be successful. But the folks who had that diagnosis, didn't know they had the diagnosis, did the exact same thing. They had the exact same bio, but their mind was different. Their mindset was different. How do you give leaders, what's the one takeaway as we wrap up? How do leaders create the right mindset for sustainable leadership? How do leaders have, we talked about, surrounding yourself with the right people, but what are some things that leader can do to create a new mindset where they're constantly in agreement with what God has said about them?
Yeah, so I think four things that I would throw out to you.
Yeah.
And these are, if it's okay to go real practical.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nuts and bolts.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm always thinking about, anytime we have a convo, even challenging somebody listening or watch them, what's something you can do in the next 24 hours?
Exactly.
So let's think real practical.
Yeah.
Let me give you four things. And this is about keeping the focus, keeping the mindset in the right place.
Yeah.
Number one, the words you say about yourself really matter. Yeah. And you said this already.
Yeah.
So you need to steward the words and thoughts that you are saying about yourself. Yeah. And I think simply make sure that what you are saying about yourself is in alignment with what God has said about you. And what you are allowing to take thought, you have to set the course for your mind. It's biblical when the scripture says, set your mind. It is challenging you to set the direction of your mind by choosing to focus on the things that are above, not the things that are below, carnal and are below. Yeah. So how do you set your mind? You steward well the words that are coming out of your mouth and the words and the thoughts that are rolling around in your head. Yeah. You need to steward, is it true? Would God have said this about me? Yeah. Is this in alignment with what God has said? Yeah. So steward your own thoughts well, and that's a constant leaning in to that for your mind. Second thing is, there is power in what you write. When you think about goal setting, when you think about people making progress, when you write a goal down, it already increases the chance of that goal becoming reality by 50%. Wow. Just because you write the goal down. And I think part of that is when you write something down, it obviously imprints that idea or goal on you more, but you have clarity, because if you can write it, it's clear. Yeah. So step 2 every day, take out an old school piece of paper and a pen and write a declaration statement about yourself. Wow. That says something to the effect of, for me, I am a son of God always. Yes. Royalty flows through my veins. Yes. I have a life that is built on mission and purpose.
Yes.
And I am completely accepted. I'm extremely valuable. I'm
Yes.
eternally loved, and I'm
Yes.
totally forgiven.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and
Yes.
I'm
yes.
going to found my life and live and lead from that place.
Yeah.
So I think you got to write it. And this may sound old school. Take the piece of paper, fold it in half, stick it in your back pocket.
Yeah.
Throughout the day, when you start getting those insecurities come in your head, you pop that paper out and you read that thing. If you will read a statement of truth over your life 5 to 10 times a day, it's going to change your life.
Come on.
So write that thing down.
on.
And then, I think, step number 3, and it goes back to that idea of that inner circle.
Yeah.
Surround yourself with people who are going to affirm what is already true about you.
Yes.
And this may sound so Instagram cliche, but you get the point. There are people, for many of us, in our VIP section that need to be removed to a regular seat.
Come on.
And one guy in the audience, I was making that statement. He said, man, sometimes you got to remove people out of the stadium altogether.
Yeah.
But it's like you will become like the people that you are the closest to.
Woo.
So make sure that who the voices that are the most intimate to you are speaking what is true about you.
Yes.
And you don't need somebody around you as a confidant who gets insecure around you.
Wow.
Who is jealous around you.
Yes.
If the people that are closest to you don't want what is best for you, they shouldn't be the closest to you because they're about their own self-interest, not about making you better. So you need to make sure you got that inner circle really aligned. A good assignment would be to take an inventory of who your people are.
Yeah.
Like, who are the closest people to you?
Yeah.
And are those the people you need in your life moving out throughout the end of the year?
Yeah.
So steward your words well. Step 1, write what is true about you. Step 2, you can do this every day. Step 3, just make sure you're taking inventory of your people, surrounding yourself with the voices that you need. And then this one I think is just a pure joy, but you got to be intentional with it. Take every opportunity to speak hope, truth into other people.
Wow.
Because when you tell other people what is true about them, it reaffirms what is true about you.
Woo.
So every time you come around somebody, you're able to say, like, hey, I may not know you real well, but I just want to affirm that you got a beautiful way that you carry yourself. And I saw you over there treating that person with kindness and respect. And I just want to affirm that was beautiful. And I don't know you, but you seem like a really beautiful person. And I hope you have God's richest blessings, in the new year. So I think just the idea of, like, don't miss an open door to speak truth and hope into somebody else. And every time you do that over and over, it ultimately reaffirms what is true about you. So I think for me, that just keeps that. Those are 4 things that help keep my mind focused. And then, last thing I would share, not as a step, but just cultivate a growth mindset. And it's like, I'm not a finished product. And I have a heck of a lot to learn in life. So I'm always going to be learning. And I'm always going to be growing. And when I hear feedback that may not be positive, I'm going to try to lean into self-awareness and think, what do I need to learn as a leader from that? But I think there's an elasticity to your mind supported by neuroscience, and so I think the more you can keep your mind growing, the healthier your mind is going to be. A stale mind is not a healthy mind. Like, you got to keep that thing growing, like new thoughts, spaces, places being challenged. But I would just offer that to anybody. Everything you want in life, everything you hope that God will do for you, it starts in your mind. Because that is the muscle that needs the most attention is between your ears. And so take care of your mind on the daily. Don't say crap about yourself. Don't do that. Because it's not helping you. So speak truth over yourself. Write truth. Surround yourself with people that affirm what is true about you. And then every opportunity, speak truth into other people. And don't do it in cringy ways. hey, it's good seeing you at Walmart. I just want to speak this Bible verse. It's like,
No.
I was like, maybe.
Yeah.
But just speak truth over somebody.
Yeah.
Encourage somebody.
Yeah.
Lift up somebody. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know what you're going through, but I hope your year gets better.
Yeah.
And I just want to remind you that your story isn't over yet.
Yeah.
And I hope you carry that with you throughout this year.
Yeah.
So whatever it is,
but
just giving people a little bit of hope.
Yeah.
I
love that. I love that.
I appreciate that you do this all the time. Like that's just the way you live your life.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to another leader earlier this week who just made this statement. I love being around Pastor because of his energy, positivity, and there's just a way that you carry yourself in a way that's hopeful.
Oh, praise
and I
God.
think it makes people feel better about their life and better about their situation. And I think when you do that for other people, your life has more hope.
It does.
And you just feel better about your situation as well.
Yeah. I think part of it is there's this incredible joy that you get when other people win.
Yeah.
I love watching other people win. I mean, it brings me joy. And that's why I started this podcast. I want leaders to win.
Yeah.
I want people to learn from the things I'm learning and to grow from things I'm growing. They say, misery loves company, hurt people, but healed people heal people, and victors raise victors. People who have won, winners want others to win. And so I hope you won with this conversation. I hope you were blessed by this conversation. Thank you, Ben, for this incredible conversation. If you want to connect with Ben, is there somewhere they can catch you? What your socials? Where can people find you, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, if you got any questions about the episode that I can help out, just Instagram.
Okay.
Just Benjamin Lundquist.
Okay.
And try to stay, at least engaged a little bit every day.
Yeah.
But would be happy to answer a DM.
Yeah.
If you got questions or this was confusing.
Yeah.
Or can you give me a little bit more about that?
Yes.
Please reach out.
Yeah.
And
and they can
glad to
find you
help
on the Rise and Lead podcast as well. Thank you so much for joining us. If this conversation was helpful for you, share it with another leader. Like I said, winners want others to win. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to help everybody create a legacy that matters. So if you want to support this podcast, leave a review, hit that notification bell, make sure you're one of the first to catch our episode. You can like this episode as well and share it with a friend. I want to thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive podcast. Keep diving deep.
This is The Deep Dive with Jose St. Phard.